Are you coming back to school with me? We could have done it all so easily.
Hi, my name is Craig Thompson Wood. I'm the board game teacher. Welcome to the summer holidays. Now, if you're a serious board gamer like me, then you may not be so familiar with what I'm about to show you today, which is the outside. So today, we're going to take a look at doing something like playing board games outside. You see I already have some friends over here. Told you I had friends. And we're setting up for some board games in my backyard. Now, I've got a pretty nice backyard, I must say. I'm really proud of it. But sometimes just to play board games outside, you know, get your mom off your back, your dad off your back, you get outside, get some fresh air. And it's just nice to have that change of environment. Just, you always have to make sure of a few things when playing board games. So as I'd mentioned, there's a number of things you're going to want to consider as you're choosing to play a board game outside. The first one, probably the most obvious one, is the weather. Depending on the weather and the weather forecast, make sure you look at what is the forecasted weather for the rest of the day, because that may help to determine whether or not it's a good idea to play outside or what kinds of games you're going to play outside. Because obviously rainy weather is going to spoil any, unless you have some good shelter, which I'll get to in a second. But wind or can be another upsetting factor, and it's going to blow your pieces, your cards, your things everywhere if you play a game outside with on a windy day. So being very aware of the weather is my number one rule or my number one thing to look at when considering playing outside. The number two consideration is shelter. So as I've mentioned, if it's rainy and you have good shelter, then it's not such a big problem. Wind can be a little more problematic, unless you have some really good shelter. You could play inside a tent, I suppose. But you can see behind me here, I have my shed, and this is also the pole to my umbrella. So I do have an umbrella, and the shed blocks a lot of the wind. So, generally speaking, I'm quite lucky here for being able to play board games outside. And many weekends, that's what I'm doing, is having some people over, and we'll play here on the back porch because it's just so lovely out here. So it's nice to get a little bit of the fresh air and come outside and enjoy the outside without, worrying about too much, because we have the wind shelter, is a little bit of sun and rain shelter, because that's something to consider too, is that if it's a sunny day, make sure you have that shelter so you don't get burned, sunburn, by staying outside too long, is also an important factor. You need to stay safe. The number three consideration for my list of things to think about when playing a board game outside is the number of components in a game. If you set up a very complicated game with lots of bits and pieces and cards and figures and things, and suddenly the weather takes an unexpected turn, tearing that all down and resetting up inside can be a real hassle. So, sometimes playing the games outside that are, maybe a little easier to set up, less components, and that way if you need to, you can transfer it inside with less of a bother. So maybe avoid using those games with lots of little pieces, lots of cards, and things that may be a little more fiddly for the outside. So number of components would be my number three. My number four consideration for playing board games outside is the types of components. Games which have smaller, more easily moved components, such as small cards, are probably not good choices for games to be playing outside, simply because one light gust of wind and everything's going to go flying. Games with heavier, chunkier pieces, perhaps the better choices for when playing outside. Now we'll be giving some examples based on these games here about which games are, good and not so good. And my number five consideration for playing a game outside is the length of the game. Playing a longer game, one which can last hours, 2 or more hours, is, again, for the reasons that weather can sometimes be unpredictable, perhaps not the best choice. Also, the longer games tend to mean that they have more of those moving pieces and things. So, again, for those reasons, the longer games tend not to be the best choices for a board game to play outside because there's just so much that could go wrong before the game is over. So my recommendation, if you're going to play outside, keep it to, light, quick to medium length games. So I wouldn't say anything more than hour and a half, and with the other considerations in mind as well. So as I said, I brought out a few games here to talk about and sort of give you some ideas of what might be good or not good games to play outside, and to tell you a little bit about each and why. So For Sale is a game, 3 to 6 players, 20 to 30 minutes, and I think that may even be on the long side. For Sale, I'm not going to give reviews of each of the game or how they're played, but it's got cardboard tokens for money and then the cards. And generally speaking, the cards are only a few out at a time, and I have mine in plastic sleeves, so that gives them a bit more weight too. I think this game's fine for outside, particularly again because it is so quick, so that if it does start getting windy or something, you can just set up again inside or even restart because it is so quick. The only thing that would be problematic with this is that you have the screens where people hide their money and such behind, and those are very easily blown over by a wind. But overall, I think For Sale is a good choice. Love Letter, a small amount of cards and things. So if it's windy, yes, it's not going to be a great choice, but as long as there's no winds and things, again, over with very quickly. Cockroach Poker, same as Love Letter, all cards, and so if there's any kind of wind, they're going to be blowing everywhere. But as long as you have the right setup with the shelter or no winds, then, and again, very quick game, so that's a good choice. Seven Wonders Duel. Now, Seven Wonders Duel is played with small, tiny cards and some bigger cards. But the thing with this one is the cards are in a very particular configuration, and where there's some cards on top of other cards, and they're in a certain shape, and it's very important that they stay in that exact formation as the game is being played. So for this reason, I would hesitate to play a game like Seven Wonders Duel outside, especially if there's any kind of wind happening, because one wind and it's going to really just ruin the whole game, because cards have to be face up, face down in particular configurations of the game. So I'd really be hesitant to recommend that one for an outside play. Splendor is a great choice because it's the big thick poker chips, which use are for the gemstones, the thick cardboard tiles for the merchants, and then the cards. Again, with cards, it's not, it's always that consideration of anything with cards. It could be blown, but a lot of the pieces in this are very sturdy and hard to move even with a gentle breeze. But even if they do get blown around, it's easy to reset them up again. It's not they're in a particular order. And the number one game, which is great for outside, this is a game you could even take to the beach and play there. You could play this thing in a swamp if you really wanted to, is Hive. And the reason this game is so durable is because all of the pieces are these really durable, what's called Bakelite tiles, and they pretty indestructible. So if they're not going to get blown by the wind. They're not even going to be bothered by rain or water. So as long as you're not dropping this piece into the ocean or down to the bottom of the swamp if you were playing there, these things are great. Nothing's going to damage them. A little bit of sand, a little bit of water, a little bit of whatever, just wipe it right off. They're durable, super, super durable, and a great fun game for 2 players. So that's my list of things to consider when playing outside. If you have any thoughts or comments on that, things you might like to add to it, please leave me a message in the comment section below. I always love to hear from the viewers. And I will be putting another video out later this week. There was a viewer request that I do something on cooperative games. So look for that later in the week, where I'll be doing a video about cooperative games and how they're a great entry-level game for families and for introducing your friends to as well. So until then, I'm Craig Thompson Wood, the board game teacher, saying thanks for coming to the classroom.
you coming back to school with